It is Friday, July 26, 2024. This is another edition of Football Today. I am Chris Rose, and I have serious FOMO because my dudes are together, Pennick and Skinner, hanging out at the warehouse of all places. They just got done attending sweaty and swampy Giants camp. How was it, Bobby?
Oh, you talk about sweaty and swampy. I just came from Florida, man. This weather is beautiful. Like I don't think I sweat even a little bit today. It was nice. So, fun day one. We're gonna be here for a while, and then we're gonna hit some other training camps. So, this truly is to me the most enjoyable time of the year to cover the NFL because you're like out in the field for one, and it's like the most 9 to 5 ish, where it's like you're not up grinding training camp film till 11 p.m. trying to get a video out. You go what's there. You see what's there, you talk about it, get a couple episodes done, and then you're good.
Yeah, do you agree with that, Rose, that this is the most fun time to cover the NFL?
No.
Well, he's not team-based, so I feel like that makes a big
I'm not
difference.
team-based.
Like the playoffs is the most fun if you're
Yes.
not team-based.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I get to cover the two best hours of our network every year. I get to do the post game on the field from the Super Bowl. So sorry.
I would probably enjoy that a little bit if I got to do it.
Yeah. So that's I apologize, but I do love calling the preseason games for the Browns. I love going to camps. I'll get to hit Niners camp coming up, which I haven't been to in many, many years. So yes, it's an awesome time of year. Everybody's seemingly in a good mood. Training camp is not nearly as draining as it once was. I used to work for the Browns. I don't know if you guys know this. I used to be a ball boy for the Browns. And I worked there.
Who was the coach?
Marty Schottenheimer was the first year I was there. First 2 years I was there, and then Bud Carson the last year. So
I have no idea who Bud Carson is.
Bud Carson was you'll know him best as the defensive coordinator for the Steel Curtain in the 70s under Chuck Noll. Very, very great defensive mind. Cleveland was the only place he got a head coaching job. Won his first game ever as a head coach, 51-0 on opening day in Pittsburgh. We made the AFC championship game that year, and then it kind of went downhill. Not great.
Wow.
There you go. Speaking of legendary coaches, I want your opinion before we do our little task today of Bill Belichik reportedly turning down Kyle Shanahan to join his defensive staff in any capacity. Were you bummed when you found out that he got the offer but said no, Bobby?
A little, because that would be insane, right? To get Bill Belichick with that level of talent. Letting Bill Belichick coach Fred Warner would have been the coolest shit in the world. But obviously I understand, like, he's the greatest head coach of all time. He's not taking a coordinator job. That is beneath him. But you know how much fun that would have been to see him like in a 49ers polo with the hoodie or whatever as the defensive coordinator. It would have been amazing.
Panic?
Well, I'm just learning of this right now, so that's really fun. Yeah, I understand why he did. It would have been awesome. Like the talent that they have, the front that they have. There was a point where I rewatched. I'm gonna maybe make a video on this, maybe 5 years from now, where I did rewatch and I tracked every single QB hit that Nick Bosa had in 2022, and the stuff that they were doing up front, and the stunts, and how Nick Bosa is such a unique pass rusher, where he rushes from strength and not from speed, and that's so rare in the NFL these days. So that would have been extremely fun. And that's that. But I also understand why Bill Belichick said, no, I'm not going to do that.
Oh, I think it would have been great. Just an enormous storyline. Would shout up probably to one of the top 3 storylines heading into the season. It would have been fantastic.
Isn't Vrabel on the I was listening to ESPN Radio 98.7. So what capacity does he have with the Browns?
He's not a coach, but he is. You'll see him on the field every day at training camp. He was out there during minicamp. So, he's a Northeast Ohio guy. He went to Walsh Jesuit High School, went to Ohio State. His agent is based in Cleveland. So he's kind of taken a year off without taking a year off. I think it's probably just another opportunity for the Browns to get a remarkable set of eyes and ears on a field that already includes Jim Schwartz. And Schwartz, worked under Vrabel there in Tennessee for a couple seasons. And also for Vrabel to kind of catch a breather and see how somebody else works in
Yeah.
Kevin Stefanski, who's done a pretty good job.
Yeah, and even Leslie, three different situations. But even Leslie Frazier's the assistant head coach of the Seahawks, but he doesn't have any other title besides that. So Belichick's not done, right? He's going to be a head coach next offseason.
Oh yeah, I don't think he's doing all this stuff to not be a head. He's got to. The offense last year tarnished his reputation a little bit. He's got to get on TV and impress everyone. And then, if Mike McCarthy was able to take a year off and get a job, Bill Belichick's going to do it.
We all know one place that Bill Belichick is going to end up. That would be Canton, Ohio, as a Hall of Famer. Hall of Fame game is coming your way. I believe it's Houston and Chicago, which is kind of interesting. That is the game, right? I believe.
Yes.
Yeah. Hopefully they play Drake May.
Houston and Chicago?
Or excuse me. Hopefully they play Caleb Williams, but they're not going to.
Well, part of the reason is because I think they play week 2.
They do. Yeah, Sunday Night Football.
That is very, very strange that they did that. They try to not do it. I understand in some cases why they do it, right? It's to bring the fan bases of guys that are getting in and all sorts of stuff, but that's an interesting one. So we decided to break down the active players that have been in the NFL since 2019 into 3 groups if they qualify. So, Pennick, since you came up with this brainchild, explain the 3 layers here.
Yeah, it's Hall of Fame week. I think we're going to have some Hall of Fame NFL trivia related stuff going on this channel as well. So I thought Football Today would jump on board, and we love our list. We love our offseason lists. And basically, let's split up who we think active players can wind up in the Hall of Fame in 3 categories. The guys that we think are locks, the guys that we think have a good chance, a solid chance of getting in, and then maybe even some younger guys or older guys that I'd like to see them or I'm rooting for them to eventually get in. And I think initially we had the idea of, we'll think of a few guys in total, but it turned out that there's a lot of good players in the NFL. There's a lot of players that have been good for a while in the NFL. And also it may even turn into a conversation on, are we letting too many guys into the Hall of Fame? Which maybe we'll even start off with that conversation, because I have a lot of guys on my list. I didn't expect to have a ton of guys. We didn't really set parameters around how many guys we were going to talk about. So maybe we'll start off with that.
I did since 2018, by the way. I have 17 who are safe, and it sounds like a lot, but when you think about it, you have got guys from like essentially 3 different 5-year draft cycles. We're going from 2000, so you have like 2006 to 11, 12 to 16, and then the guys that are like just young and getting it. And for 4 guys to get in every year, I feel like that's not as much as it when you think of it.
Yeah,
right?
You were echoing a little frustration when you were making your list about are we letting too many guys into the Hall of Fame? Are we locking too many guys in? Chris, what do you think?
Well, I always feel funny. Well, first of all, you're right, Bobby. It is a list since 2018, not 2019. So that would mean they're starting their 7th year at worst. And we think that 6 full years is probably a decent idea of gathering where guys are. There are some guys that get into the Hall of Fame, and I can tell you this, just having talked to some voters, the voting process is very strange in this sport. They get together, they talk about the merits, and then they vote right away. Whereas baseball, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, they send the ballots out basically right around Thanksgiving. You have all of December to figure it out. You can talk to as many people as you want, contemporaries, other ball players that played against guys. I know they do a lot of this sort of research. And then by basically January 1st, they've got to turn it in. So it's 2 very different ways to think about it. Part of the problem I've got with the Hall of Fame voting in the NFL is they talk about these log jams at positions. And I don't think that's a great way to go about representing who the best player in the sport is. Like one year there were like 4 or 5 wide receivers that included a group like Chris Carter and Tim Brown and Andre Reed, all great players that would eventually find their way into Canton. But it just felt like a weird way to vote. Like, well, we've got to do this in order to move the wide receiver chain because someone down the line, Randy Moss is coming. It was just,
I don't like that at all.
Right? It's a weird way.
Yeah, I don't like that at all. Like if they're all the 5 same position, like I don't see there being any problem with that. Especially when we're talking about guys on the first ballot, right? Like if you think someone's worthy of a first ballot, Hall of Fame, he should be in there automatically from day one, and not because there's two others. It's going to be interesting with the wide receivers. Years from now, we'll see like when these guys retire and stuff. But there's a lot of guys who are going to have crazy numbers and can make a case.
Oh yeah, and that's the biggest problem. That's
like,
the
will
hardest
the standard
thing to do.
raise for wide receivers down the road?
It has to, and you have to lower it for running backs.
Yes.
Just the way the game has been played. I honestly believe that because guys who are getting 95 catches a year, the rules have been so heavily slanted toward offense, and now there's pass interference or defensive holding called, it feels like every third pass play, that it's hard for us to tell who's great and who's not. You can't just look at the stats. It just doesn't do it. With that being said, let's go over our locks. I suppose these are the guys that we don't feel like we would have to discuss, but I think we're going to be discussing some names. So, Pennick, you want to give us your list?
Yeah. Aaron Rodgers,
Mm-hmm.
active leader in MVPs. Zach Martin, he is the active leader in all pros now that Aaron Donald is retired. Travis Kelce,
Mm-hmm.
Bobby Wagner,
Mm-hmm.
Von Miller.
Yep.
I have Khalil Mack. Patrick Mahomes. Like, I think even if Patrick Mahomes retired now, I think he's Hall of Famer. Chris Jones, surprisingly only 30. I thought he was older. Surprisingly only 30 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I have Trent Williams, Derrick Henry, and I initially didn't have this guy in, but I do think if Tyreek Hill were to retire tomorrow, I think he would get in.
Okay.
And that's my locks.
I have a shorter list than Bobby. So, Bobby, is it okay if I go next?
Yeah, go next.
The only guys I had on my list that you did not have were Tyron Smith and Justin Tucker.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm gonna add Justin Tucker real quick.
Yeah.
Do you agree with? By the way, is Tucker? To me,
Actually,
it's
you
a
know
no.
what? I'm gonna put him in the good chance. I'm not giving. I'm not.
You're not
kickers
making him a
anything.
lock, huh?
I'm not making a kicker a lock.
There's a sporkle that Dalton Feely and I did that was, the active players as of last year that have like AV, approximate value on Pro Football Reference, like the players that have like the best chance.
Mm-hmm.
And Justin Tucker and Lamar Jackson are listed back to back to each other in terms of active players with like the highest AV with like the best chance. So funny.
The reason I put him real quickly, I think he changes the way the game is played at the end of halves and at the end of games. The way that a play caller can figure out, okay, we can run these sort of plays because we only have to get to the other team's 47-yard line to have a legitimate shot with our kicker, as opposed to the other play callers who are like, yeah, we got to get it down to the 36 to feel good. So we have to get another 11 yards than maybe Baltimore's play caller does. I just think he affects it, and I've seen him nail so many. We don't have to spend a ton of time on kickers. He's damn good. The three guys I did not have that I had in the next category were Khalil Mack, Chris Jones, and Derrick Henry. Chris Jones was the first one I booted out of this surefire list. So I definitely know why you're there.
Let's talk about Derrick Henry, because is this the only running back that we have on any of our categories? Is there any other running back?
I have one in the little more category, but I have Derrick Henry. Like, you talked about like with running back numbers and stuff, but Derrick Henry, like he's been consistent, right? He's at 9,500 rushing yards.
Yep.
So right at that 10,000 yard mark. How many receiving yards? He's got 1,500 receiving yards. I mean, he's just been a dominant back year in, year out. I think he's a Hall of Famer. He's led the league in rushing a couple times. 10 plus touchdowns every single year for the last 6 years. And that includes a season where he missed half the game, over half the games in 2021. Had 40 yards short of 1,000 and 10 touchdowns.
Yeah, and that's why I had him in the really almost there, whatever the heck we're calling that second category. What are we calling that, Pennick?
Good chance.
Good chance.
Good chance. I like
maybe like fourth ballot or something.
I like really almost there, but good chance is fine too.
Good chance to almost there.
Yeah, listen, Derrick Henry's on my list for that one, and I get it. It's just I'm saying that if they walked off the field and said, "All right, I'm done. I've had enough," like, is the next turn a right turn to Canton, or for him maybe a left?
And I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you why it's a yes.
Yeah,
because what's the eligibility period? 6 years?
4.
4?
Yeah.
So we're gonna look 4 years from now
5.
with the 4, 5, 6.
I don't know.
It's around there. We're gonna look at Derrick Henry's by the time that his career ends and his eligibility comes up. We're gonna fully kind of let our teeth sink into the whole, like you said, Chris, that we're gonna have to reevaluate running back numbers and stances on running backs that are eligible for the Hall of Fame. We will look at him as one of the first movements of that as a dominant back while he played, and his career's not over. Like he's 30 years old. He just signed with the Ravens, and he was coming off of a somewhat major injury.
And the only active back that's even close to him is Zeke.
And now he's playing a really good, with a really, I don't want to say really good offensive line, but a really good offensive infrastructure system. And we'll see if the Ravens can develop that offensive lineup a little bit more.
Yeah, you don't have to explain his future. I got his future. Like, I see that. Yeah. I'm saying if he
but
walked
even
off
right
the
now,
field today.
Right. I think we would have to.
I think so. I would, if I was a voter, I would put him. Like, I wouldn't even think twice about it.
But I even think as the years go on, we're going to have that process of reevaluating the running back position and reevaluating who should be eligible and who is worthy of it.
Yep.
And I think Derrick Henry, if he were to hang it up right now, would be like that first instance of, yes, this guy deserves it because of how dominant he was for a long time in the NFL, which Derrick Henry's career has been long for a modern day running back.
Yeah. Who else do you have on your list? Because you've got the longest list of us all, Bobby.
So I think I had Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, Bobby Wagner. I don't know if you guys had Bobby Wagner.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tyron Smith. I know you had Rose. Jason Peters. He's not technically on a team right now, so maybe that one doesn't count.
Yeah, I don't think he's on it.
But he did play last year and hasn't officially retired. And he signed last year at week 2 or week 3.
Yeah, I mean, I would have put him in. I just didn't.
Okay. So again, Von Miller. I don't think did you guys say Von Miller?
I did.
Both.
Oh, okay. Trent Williams, Zach Martin, Khalil Mack, Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill was probably just right on the border for me. Chris Jones, Mike Evans. We always talk about Mike Evans as a Hall of no one blinks when you say that. Myles Garrett, Derrick Henry, T.J. Watt, and then Jalen Ramsey.
Yeah, there's a bunch of guys that I can't put in the Hall of Fame yet. Once again, to me, the entire stipulation is you stop playing today.
I agree. I'm with you, but we do keep if you have the counting stats that aren't maybe the top, but we know your career wasn't the longest. Those guys usually get in. The only guy who I remember who struggled with getting in that was on that was Patrick Willis. I think he's really the only guy who's short career, great stats that really had a hard time getting in of recent memory.
So the guy, I didn't have Khalil Mack in that group, and he's another one. He's the first 3 guys I kept out were Jones, Mack, and Mike Evans. Those were the first 3 I kept out. Mack I could easily be convinced of. He's over 100 career sacks, isn't he now?
Yes.
Okay. And he had a ton last year, including, didn't he have a
resurgent
game
year
or something? Yeah. And I am curious if the way we look at receivers will also impact the way we look at sack stats, because passing has become such a huge part of the game.
Tell him the stat. He figured this out. Despite the fact that we throw the ball so much more, sacks actually used to happen way more often. And they Pro Football References went back and counted all those guys because they didn't count them. Those guys actually had way more sacks, every year. I think you had a stat where it's
I do.
There was 50 guys who had 10 sacks, and then nowadays there's 15 guys.
Yeah.
So that was actually that was something that Justin brought to me, where it's those guys.
Is that a possibility though, that it's the way we play defense? We didn't rotate guys the way we do now. So
I also think it's quarterback.
And I also think quarterbacks just didn't get there was no
Oh yeah, there were mobile quarterbacks the way that everybody
non-mobile.
You're holding on to the ball forever.
The West Coast offense changed the NFL. Everyone else was just hanging on to the ball forever.
Yeah, in 1985, 29 players had at least 10 sacks on the season, and then in 2020, 10 players had at least 10 sacks on the season.
Yeah. But that doesn't tell me overall sacks.
Right, but the top guy, I will say the top guys consistently get they're in the teens, and I think that's the really impressive part. Where even let's just Julius Peppers is going in the Hall of Fame
He's 5th all time,
this
Yeah.
week.
but he played 16 years.
Played for a long time.
He's also an
You know,
animal.
he has-
What do we got?
He has 2 years of sacks in the teens versus Myles Garrett, TJ Watt. They get that like every year.
They do.
That's the
And
like
TJ Watt gets almost 20 every year.
yeah, and like the top guys are just so freaking good at it that it's insane. It's crazy.
And
Listen-
Watt, I think, is tied for the all-time single sack season, right?
Yeah, with Strahan 22.5.
Yeah. The next group of guys, the good chance guys, there's a ton of them. And so when I leave guys off of my lock list, it's not because, oh my God, you don't think Myles Garrett or TJ Watt's a Hall of Famer? I do.
right now.
I just
Yeah.
want them, they both came in the league in 2017. And I think that in another year, if they both get between 15 and 20 this year, if we had this discussion next season, I would probably move them up a category.
Yeah,
Something like
I
that.
get that. I get that. I just think we judge guys based on, like, again, you have to have like certain amount, right? You can't just put on a guy who had like 2 great, except unless you're Terrell Davis, a guy who had 2-3 great seasons and nothing else. But if you have like, that's why I think starting at 2018 is good, because if you have like 6-7 years of elite production and say you retire early, I would put you in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
Right. Like Patrick Willis, to me, it was crazy how long he had and the guy was an all-pro every single year. And he only played 6 years, I believe.
Yeah, I think he got maybe a 7th, possibly a 7th. Who's the most interesting, unless you want to talk more about the guys you have as locks? Because I think there were a few on that list.
What do you guys think about Jalen Ramsey?
He's on my
He's
next
kind
list.
of known as like the number 1 cornerback for most of his top 3 cornerback most of his career. Lockdowns, wide receiver ones, and with positions like corner, name recognition, like that type of stuff matters with this.
It does. But you know what? What do you think? This is terrible. The thing I think of first with him is him getting dusted in the Super Bowl when he was with the Rams.
Yeah, but he was great in that Super Bowl outside of one play. You know what I mean?
I think it was 2. I think he had 2 that were really like
the T. Higgins
jarring.
offensive pass interference.
Yes.
And then
I thought there was one other one where we were like, all I could tell you is he didn't want to come on the set afterward. He just freaking won the Super Bowl. We were like, you want to come on? He's like, nah, I'm good.
But I'm like, what corners since Darrelle Revis came into the NFL has like been better for a long period of time than Jalen Ramsey?
So few that I only have 2 other corners on my 2 lists, period.
I don't have any.
I have some safeties, but I don't have any corners.
I've got 2 corners. I've got,
Okay.
Well, we'll get to it eventually.
Yeah.
But
There might be guys I forgot. I didn't spend
Mike
an hour
Evans,
making
like
them.
I said, I could have easily put him in this list because he has done things that nobody has ever done. And it's so funny when we rank the top wide receivers every year, his name virtually never appears on a list. Would you agree with that, Pennick?
Yeah. Yeah, but he's just reliable, and I think he should get more credit for the quarterbacks that he's been successful with. Like, I may be forgetting somebody, but Baker Mayfield, best quarterback statistical season. Jameis, but he throws a deep, throws interception, so maybe that's a little bit of a bad take, but there's never been a stable quarterback situation there.
Yeah, it hasn't been great except for the 3 years he had Tom Brady.
Oh, well, there you go. Dumb idiot.
No. But we get it. I mean, the guy's been in the league since 2014.
Yeah. Josh Freeman throwing him the ball early on.
So
He's
interesting.
had 1,000 yards every season, 11,000 all time. I got him in there.
Yeah.
Bobby, did you put D-Hop in there or not?
No.
So why do we differentiate, or how did you, between Mike Evans and D-Hop?
I just think Mike Evans has been more consistently good out of the 2.
I mean, is there
Oh
anything?
my God! You know what? I'm wrong. I'm wrong. DeAndre Hopkins belongs in there.
Okay, did you have Devontae Adams?
He's in my good chance.
See, this is the thing. I put I didn't have a single wide receiver in the locks category because I'm going to have a hard time figuring out all of the numbers that we just talked about earlier in the show. So I've got D-Hop, Devontae, Tyreek Hill, Mike Evans all together. And like I said, if we do this next year at this time, I probably boost a few of them up, if not all.
Yeah. So again, I should have put Hopkins in there. You're right on that. Adams is at 10,700 yards. He's been in the league for 10 years now.
See, but to me, it's more than that. It's more than strictly looking at the numbers. Like when I just watch games on Sunday, I do feel like Devontae Adams, if I'm telling the story 20 years from now about the best receivers of the time, I think he might be the first one that comes out of my mouth. I believe that much in him.
Yeah.
I really do. Makes every type of catch.
I believe in I believe in like Mike Evans like that too. Maybe it's because I'm in Florida, so I've been I've been exposed to Mike Evans a lot, but Mike Evans has just always been great, like from day one, essentially.
Pennick, where do you have Christian McCaffrey?
I'm going to be honest, I don't right now.
I have him in the little more.
Wow.
He's like 150th in scrimmage yards. He needs more time. You know, he had 2 years where he essentially missed the entire season. We need more, but I think he's probably on his way.
Yeah, I've got him in the pretty sure category, and maybe I'm a victim of the recency bias here.
And he's right on that cut line for 2018. He's got 6 that like there's 4 dud seasons in there.
Yeah, I mean we're talking about Derrick Henry being maybe a lock. I mean, I think he's a lock at 9,500 yards, and Christian McCaffrey's got 6,100. Which again, this is part of the conversation of the evolution of thinking about running backs.
McCaffrey has more receiving and stuff too, but
yeah, man, I don't have him there right now.
Well,
which is tough.
Are they both former offensive player of the years? Right?
Yeah, and McCaffrey gets more a lot more receiving.
Yes.
I think he has like 3,000 more. So I just need a couple more. He needs to have a couple more years of good production, and he's in. But if he like you when you talk about if they retired today, you would talk about, man, awesome short career, some dud years in there, but was the best as prime, wouldn't get in. Where Henry, if he retired, I would put him in.
All right, who's the most interesting? Give me the 2 most interesting names in your good chance category.
Russell Wilson.
Okay.
Does he get in? Like I it's so hard to make up my mind on this. Super Bowl champion, and he was awesome in Seattle. Like we can't ignore all that because this went so bad at the end of his career when he, all that guaranteed money and a trade, huge trade. But I mean, he was, putting up 4,000 yards almost every single year, 30 plus touchdowns every single year, wasn't throwing interceptions, making plays with his legs. I think he gets in, but the last couple of years leave such a last few years leave such a bad taste in your mouth in the immediate. But I think he gets in.
Pennick, did you have him on any list?
No.
I didn't either. I totally forgot about him. That's amazing that I totally forgot about Russell Wilson. Shame on me.
I mean, you know where my brain goes to when you say Russell Wilson? The decision.
That's right.
No. The decision to Chris, let me know if this is just too much of a Giants take here as a Giants fan. The fascinating case of Eli Manning and the decision to let him in or not may possibly open up even more of a Pandora's box on who deserves to get in and who does not. Do you agree with that?
No, I totally disagree. Eli Manning's going to get in because of 2 Super Bowls. Yeah, Eli Manning will get in because of the 2 Super Bowls. Russell Wilson could get in because he was like a viable MVP candidate for a while. I don't ever remember Eli being a viable MVP candidate. Not once.
But the way that it ended, right? You're right. No, you're right.
Russ never got an MVP vote. Remember that was going around a few years ago?
But he did. I think he finished second one year without getting a first place MVP vote. But it's stupid because if you have everybody was voting, I forget who it was that won it that year, but it was such a landslide, like it was a no-brainer. And then we thought, oh, well, it's such a slight that Russell Wilson didn't get a single MVP vote.
I think it was probably 2020, the year he threw 40 touchdowns and 4,000 yards.
Sounds
that
right.
was the rush for MVP. That's when that thing started coming out.
Yeah, let Russ cook.
So who was it? Who was it that ended up winning the MVP that year?
That would be, I think that's a Rodgers year, right?
2020.
It's either Rodgers or Mahomes.
Rodgers won it back-to-back 2020 and 2021.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a Rodgers year.
Right. So then people were then asked, well, would you have voted for him over Aaron Rodgers? And people are like, no, of course not. Well, then, right. So he's never going to get a first place vote. But he just
Eli was an MVP candidate just for 1 year, but
okay. It slips my memory.
2011, another Aaron Rodgers year.
Look at that.
My God.
He had 8 fourth quarter comebacks, was top of the league in yards and touchdowns, and with awful offensive line play and no running game. The year they won the second Super Bowl, he was, and that was his best year of his career by far.
So Chris, he makes it. Russell Wilson.
Whew. That is a tough one. That's where feelings could get involved among voters. That's an interesting one. I'll just leave it at that. I don't.
Do writers have? I know baseball writers have they really let their egos get in the way. The football writers, is it a similar thing except it's just not as talked about enough?
Yeah, absolutely, totally. Yeah, how can you not?
Yeah,
not as bad as baseball though.
No, because
I know Tiki suffered because he beefed with some of the people who represent New York in those meetings that you talk about.
And he did shitty stuff, like talk about other people's money and stuff. Like that does affect people even when you're told only to think about what happens between the lines. NFL Hall of Fame writers are instructed, we only care what happens between the 153 and a half yard field. That's it. That's all we care about. In baseball, there is a morality or character. There's a character clause, whatever the hell that
sucks.
means. It's so stupid. It's
their
so
Hall of
dumb.
Fame, I don't even care about baseball, but their Hall of Fame irritates the shit out of me.
Yeah, well,
David Ortiz getting in because he was friendly with the media after got.
Well, that's not the only reason.
Well, I'm saying, but he tested positive for steroids, and you have all these other greats out.
Report. Yes.
But he's the exception. He's been the only exception to the rule. It drives me fucking nuts.
Yeah, you're in the right area. I'll give you you're in the right area. Pennick, who do you have? Maybe 2 or 3 names on the really good chance list. That's interesting.
Let's go to the interior, shall we? Calais Campbell.
Mm-hmm. I have
Cam Jordan.
Same.
And even Cam Hayward. 3 C's. Alliteration.
Yeah. The 3 triple C's.
Triple C's.
Kids do in school.
That's what they call it. So what do we think about those 3?
Yeah. They're all there for me.
Same.
I think Cam Hayward is the most interesting one right now because I think, last year he missed half the season. He had a lot of injuries. So I think you've kind of maxed out of what you're going to see. It's not like, 1 year is going to make the difference. So do you think that he is when his name...
I do. And I think being a Pittsburgh Steeler D lineman for that long gives him an extra pop where I wonder about Calais Campbell because all football heads know Calais Campbell, but he spent a lot of years on bad Cardinals teams and bad Jags teams. And, towards the end of his career, a little bit as a journeyman with, Baltimore, Atlanta. Now
he's been good as a journeyman.
Miami.
That's the thing.
Yeah, I'm saying he just doesn't come up to the casual people as much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think he should be in, but I think he's going to be Russell Wilson, the quarterback. But I think he's the most interesting one out of my good chance guys because I think he deserves to be in. But people just don't talk about Calais Campbell outside of the casual fan doesn't talk about Calais Campbell that often.
I think he should be in the Hall of Fame just based on the fact that his rookie year when he played in the Super Bowl, he was on their kickoff coverage unit at 300 pounds.
He wore number 81 at the University of Miami. I loved him.
Yeah. Oh, you did? Yeah. And maybe the greatest voice in NFL history, perhaps.
Better than Xavier Legette?
Well, has yet to play a game. So
yeah,
he's going to move up the charts. He's going to be worth his interviews are going to be worth playing just, I think, almost weekly on Football Today. Just to, it could be totally nonsensical and have nothing to do with what we're talking about other than to play it.
We could just have a segment where it plays, and then we don't even have to respond about it.
I would be asking him like world. I'd be asking his opinion on like Trump and Kamala Harris to hear his opinion in that voice.
Yeah, because that's what people will be tuning in for our podcast for. Nailed it. Those are all really good ones. So 3 guys I have: Levante David.
Bam.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody mentioned him, right? Yet?
I got him in good chance.
Okay. Stephon Gilmore, who, as we currently tape, is not on a team. Didn't love him.
I don't have him in.
Okay.
I don't either.
There's some down years. There's some injury years. I don't
very
have him
good
in.
years.
Yes,
Very good years.
I agree, but I don't have him in.
I don't either.
Once again, this guy's not on a roster, but I think he wants to keep playing. At least I believe he's not. Patrick Peterson.
I wouldn't put him in either. I did think about him.
Really? I think wasn't he a Pro Bowler each of his first 8 or 9 years, and truly a shutdown guy.
Yeah, his peak was pretty insane.
Maybe I judge corners tough, but
I think you do. I think the fact that you had Jalen Ramsey in
3-time All-Pro. Yeah, he was a Pro Bowler each of his first 8 seasons.
I think I would.
Let's see.
Because his peak was nuts. Those were even Cardinals teams that weren't all that like, oh, what is Arizona doing? But you're talking about Patrick Peterson every year.
I'll put him in a good chance.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I did think about it.
So I think those were the most interesting guys. Does anybody have someone on their list that we haven't mentioned through these first 2 lists?
I have Lane Johnson.
Yep.
Demario Davis.
Wow.
And Larry Tunsil. Those are the ones that we haven't mentioned so far.
Okay.
I have Demario Davis in. I'd like to see it, and I'm rooting for it. And I think, like, even though Demario Davis is old, he has aged like a fine wine. Like, I love Demario Davis's NFL career, where his first half of his NFL career is a good football player. It's not a Hall of Fame player. He's suddenly, since he's got with New Orleans, suddenly it's just become casually just one of the best interior linebacker like pass rushers in the league. Where it's like a lock that you're going to get at least 4 to 6, 7 sacks from him from the interior spot every single year, and he does everything else well too. And he gets 100 tackles every single year.
Double-digit tackles for loss every year. 5-time All-Pro.
And he just started doing that.
Yeah.
Like in 2018, 2019, and he's been in the league since when, Bobby?
2012.
Yeah, which is crazy.
Yep.
It's crazy. He's a
good one.
If he was on like a more successful team, he would have more pop to him.
Yeah.
So this gets to our more to do list. And I think this could actually be the most fascinating of our 3 lists. How jammed is yours, Bobby?
I only have I'm just remembering this guy actually was in the 2018 draft. I have 7.
Okay.
So I have 3 quarterbacks, Lamar and Josh Allen.
Mm-hmm.
Great, they'll get in, but quarterback I actually value longevity more than like other positions.
Yeah.
Matthew Stafford.
Okay.
If he got one more Super Bowl, he's in. Right?
Well, that's a lot to do.
I know, but he has like a good case. Like you can make the case for him right now. So there's like he could do one more thing and just be a lock in there, and he could still get in too. McCaffrey is on there, like I mentioned. Cooper Kupp is on there. Cooper Kupp probably won't get in, but could. Roquan Smith. If he plays 4 or 5 more years at this level, which he can, and then Fred Warner.
Okay.
Talked about Demario Davis. I also have Roquan Smith. I have Myles Garrett. He's just been that good, but he's, again, we got to see more. He's gonna get probably 100 sacks this year. I think he's like 88. Laramie Tunsil, the 2 guys that I'm interested, because this is where the safeties come in, where I didn't have the corners. I do have Minka Fitzpatrick.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's going to. I mean, he's been like an all-pro, first-team all-pro ever since he's gotten with the Steelers. And the reason why I didn't get there last year is because he was hurt. But every year he's a first-team all-pro, even with Miami.
My thing is I think he needs like 3 more years of this to get in for the safety spot.
Oh, even from I'd like to I'd like to see, like, he needs to show more, 3 more to even get on the list. Okay.
No, I'm saying like when I say a little more, I'm like one. It's weird criteria.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird category.
But I think if Minkah Fitzpatrick retired today, he wouldn't be anywhere near the conversation. Where I think these other guys would.
But here's a guy that is close because he's older. Tyrann Mathieu. Honey Badger.
Yeah, that's good. I like that one.
That's
a long career.
That's a tough one.
He has a similar amount of interceptions as Harrison Smith, where I don't think Harrison Smith's
not getting in.
But more successful, more storied. I think he has more all pros.
That's a tough one.
Has one more.
It's hard. I didn't have to go look at like safeties that have gotten in, but that's a tough one.
Safeties is a very small number, very small. That's going to be fascinating. I like that name to be brought up in the discussion.
Yeah,
I'm going to look.
Did you have anybody else, or is that it?
No, that's it.
Okay.
Like John Lynch. If John Lynch took that long in as Honey Badger, I'm looking up safeties right now.
So John Lynch was a real interesting one. I talked to a lot of people about that, and he was considered like, for some people, the 4th best player on that defense with the Bucs, right? It was Sapp and Brooks. Those guys were 1 and 2. And there's a lot of people that felt like Rondé Barber with his versatility.
I think Rondé should get in. Oh, Rondé did get in last year.
Did.
I believe he should have been in.
Yeah. But it took him a long time. And same for John Lynch. It took him a long time.
Yeah. But I'm looking at safeties right now. Steve Atwater, Brian Dawkins, Bobby Dillon, Kenny Easley, I don't know those guys. Cliff Harris, Paul Krause, Troy Polamalu, Ed Reed, those are first ballot. Johnny Robinson, old Johnny, Donnie Shell, Emlyn Tennell, who has the second most interceptions of all time, and Willie Wood.
Okay, so I can
the
just tell you a
criteria
little bit
for safety is so high.
Well, it's totally changed too. Paul Krause had the most interceptions in the NFL for a long time. Kenny Easley is a former Defensive Player of the Year whose career was cut short, but was a badass. He was really
Bob
good.
Dylan played football.
Yeah, well, he was great. He was great, and he was awesome in We Are the World too. For my more to do, I'm surprised nobody has mentioned Keenan Allen. You think he's just a compiler?
I'm going to look up his stats right now because usually, you know me, I like to do just crazy amount of notes. I didn't do the crazy preparation for this one.
That's okay.
He doesn't get in. If we're talking about like Hopkins, he has 10,000 career yards and 11 seasons, I believe.
Yeah,
11 years. No, if you average less than 1,000 yards per year, I'm not putting you in.
Yeah, the injuries kind of killed him.
I had Fred Warner. This is the
Never
category.
10 touchdowns in a season.
Yeah.
This is the category I had Jalen Ramsey in. Minkah Fitzpatrick. I had your 2 quarterbacks in Lamar and Josh Allen. I didn't even have Stafford on my list because I just think the ask is so much to make and win another Super Bowl. I just think that's like,
but I mean, when he won the Super, I know we do this after every fucking Super Bowl, but people are saying he's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, but I mean, it's possible, and I think he's been to like 1 Pro Bowl in his career, which is not the end all be all in my book at all. I've got some interior offensive linemen here. Joel Bitonio has made 6 straight Pro Bowls. So if he gets that number up to 8, like that's usually where guys start paying attention to you. And Quentin Nelson, who got off to an amazing start in his career, but it's soured a little bit. So, that'll be interesting. And the last name I've got on here, and sure, you can call me a homer, and it is a huge question mark because he's coming back from a major, major injury, but was on a Hall of Fame trajectory, was Nick Chubb.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it's going to look like down the line, but he's still young enough to put together stats. And you're talking about a guy, look at his average yards per carry and where it ranks. I know Jamal Charles was also up there, but this is a guy who, I mean, his first, once Hugh Jackson was gone and somebody actually started using him from his back half of his rookie year on, has put up just insane numbers, and particularly in the fourth quarter. So he's a guy hopefully bounces back.
Yeah, he's not. That's not just the offensive line there. Like he's breaking tackles, yards after contact.
5.3 career yards per
He
carry.
does. He does everything. Now, like I was saying, I think Stefanski in the line is a huge part of that. But like everything backs up that Chubb is doing his part, and then even more.
Right.
Like you don't just have a good offensive line and a good
my
play
God.
caller when you're averaging over 5 yards per carry and you're getting the ball as much as he is. So
Let me ask you, who is Marion Motley
Marion Motley was a
Motley.
Yes.
from the
He was
Motley
a-
crew?
He was a bruiser back in the day. I believe Marion Motley wore number 76.
So
this is
as
for
a
those-
running back?
Yeah, those were legendary. Those were those
Okay,
legendary
so out of
Browns.
real running backs, and that guy's wearing number 76.
Yes.
God.
He is second all time in yards per carry, only behind Jamal Charles.
Yeah. So there you go. There you go.
I'm sure you were a nice man, Marion Motley.
Former Cleveland Brown.
Yeah, I mean, play nice here. This is my
Come
team
on.
you're talking about, pal.
You mentioned the guards, though, and guard is another high barrier of entry. So, like, Zach Martin's a first ballot.
Yep.
I just feel like that's one where you got to have the long longevity to get in, and that's why I didn't put Quentin Nelson on this. Like, I think Quentin Nelson needs like 5-6 more years of being this type of player. And who was the other one you had? Joel Botonio.
Joel Batonio. Yeah.
Excuse me.
That's
You think
all right.
you think he would get in?
Well, that's what I'm saying is that he needs another 2 to 3 years of it. I mean, that's how I read the criteria here for the last part is that you need a couple more. I don't know if he's going to get that. He's 32 now. But when he and Joe Thomas lined up next to one another, it was the only good part of our team. That's all I can tell you. And one guy's in Canton, and I think one guy will get in the discussion. So I don't know how far the discussion will go. But
Jerry Kramer is a Hall of Fame guard.
yes, well,
Was
did
that
throw the most-
inspiration for Seinfeld? I know Jerry Seinfeld is his real name, but for Jerry Kramer.
Jerry Kramer threw, the most famous block in NFL championship game history.
Who was the
Bart
only
Starr in the
offensive
ice ball.
lineman to win MVP?
The only offensive lineman to win MVP.
Oh,
Was he
Played for
also
the
like a
Giants.
kicker?
Oh,
Oh,
he played for the Giants. I think he
You're not gonna say
invented
Pat-
pulling.
who?
Mel Hine.
Okay, I would not have gotten that. We could have been here all day.
Didn't he invent pulling or something?
you don't know your 1930s and mid 40s Giants, Chris? He kind of like revolutionized blocking schemes as a lead blocker, and he was a two-way player at linebacker too. Mel Hine,
Okay,
history lesson.
very good. That's nice. All right. Well, I mean, I think I like our list. It makes you think a little bit as we are now fully entrenched in training camp.
We
Now
did
you're
it.
like, okay, well, that guy, he said he was only maybe, or I need to see a few more years, or that guy was a lock and he still stinks. Love that stuff.
It's crazy with wide receiver because I'm counting it right now. There's 22 wide receivers in Hall of Fame of all time,
Mm-hmm.
and there's like 10 guys in the NFL who you can make arguments for right now.
Like I said, guys, it's going to be a real problem differentiating. You guys know who Lynn Swan is, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
The Immaculate Reception. Or no, not the Immaculate Reception. The other. What was that? What was Swan's catch called?
Well, it was the one in Super Bowl 10 where it tips up in the air and he made a beautiful catch.
What did they call that one?
A beautiful, beautiful catch.
I thought it had a name. Anyways,
So, okay. So he played only 9 seasons, 9 full seasons. How many career receptions do you think Lynn Swan had?
503.
Mm-hmm. Justin?
372.
336.
I
guys.
was almost right.
336 receptions.
Take that.
And he is in the Hall of Fame. And so this is why we're going to have a real difficult. He was great.
He got the 4-time Super Bowl champ and MVP bump.
I'm with you on all that stuff. I get it.
And Steelers gives you like an automatic bump for some reason.
I hear you.
Because I guess they've been really good.
Something I can't wrap my head around is CeeDee Lamb got 181 targets this past year,
Right.
which led the NFL, and it doesn't feel like outlandish that their receivers can't get 170 and 180. Whereas like you look back at like Julio Jones getting like 150, 160. I mean, even Jerry Rice, there were some years where he had like 150. But I mean, that's Julio Jones. That's Jerry Rice. And now CeeDee Lamb, who is good, we'll see where his career can wind up. But I just feel like there are going to be receivers that get in the 160s, 170s every single year. And it's not just adding another game that's leading to that. It's crazy.
It is crazy. Good luck to all the voters as you try and figure out who's really Hall of Fame worthy and who's not. And I'm sure come Super Bowl time when the next class is introduced, we'll all look back and say, there's no way that guy was better than that dude who got left off. Because that's always a fun exercise too, which I'm sure we'll be fully entrenched in next year when the Super Bowl's in New Orleans. All right, boys. We're going to be back at it again early next week. There will be a ton of camp stories. There's some holdouts. By the way, Trent Williams holding out. It's just announced by Kyle Shanahan. Not there. Holding out. Looking for another contract.
Remember when Washington traded him for a 5th-round pick?
How'd that work out for the old Commanders? Pretty well?
Who was that 5th-round pick? I'm interested now.
Not great. Probably not great. All right, so we're back at it again next week. Shout out to producer Mikey for always putting it together. Pennick, good idea on this one. That was fun. Always.
Thank you. We may have to BS our way on a few more, and then
Benjamin St. Juste, gave up like the second most yards in football last year.
Yeah.
Okay,
but at least we know who he is.
Yeah.
You got a big hey out of all of us. So
yeah.
It's not wait, that guy got cut his second camp.
Did you lie to us?
No, actually, I'm wrong.
Oh, Bobby.
It's Benjamin St. Juste and Keith Ismail, the guard.
Oh, well.
I also kind of know him.
Now that
I think he was San Diego State.
That totally changes things now. Totally.
Yeah, San Diego State. How about that?
We're playing football next week.
Y'all don't know fucking shit like
we are
going
to play football next week. We can't wait. So for Justin Pennick and Bobby Skinner, I am Chris Rose. We will see you next week here on Football Today.